Hey, everybody. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. My name's Dion. I came into AA let me see, this goes this way. I came into AA in 1968, April 1st. So I've been clean and sober 56 years. I have three daughters who love me. Thank you guys, and thank the steps, and thank my sponsor and AA. It wouldn't have happened without this program. Just got off a cruise with my wife of 61 years and my daughters. Uh, they left their husbands home and their kids, and it was just wonderful to be with my three daughters and my girls for a week. It was a bit of heaven for me. I didn't have one uncomfortable moment. And again, I am not going to take credit for anything because it's all AA and the steps and God. So I'm here, and I'll tell you a little about, share my experience, strength, and hope. Uh, Hopefully, I get to the hope. My experience and strength, that's easy to share, but the hope is the important part. The hope is like, to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship. You could be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, the fellowship, for 20 years and still kick your dog and yell at your neighbor and not get along with your wife. But you want to go from the fellowship of AA to the fellowship of the Spirit. And that's where all the peace and the strength and the hope and the serenity and the security and all that beauty, wisdom, and truth reside. So I'm not gonna give you a drunk-a-log because you guys know the bit. We're just powerless. I was in the Institute of Living for 4 months when I was 19 years old, and when I came out, what do you think I did? So I drank, I drugged. I was in Mount Sinai Hospital for a month. I'm talking about 1966, 67. What do you think I did when I came out? We're powerless. It's like, you know the deal. So, I come into AA and I find out it's a physical allergy, that I have this allergy, I don't digest alcohol like everybody else. It sets up this compulsion and this obsession of the mind. So it's physical allergy and obsession of the mind. It's and it's a spiritual sickness. It's like a spiritual disconnect. And I certainly was there, and I know what that's like. And if there is a hell, I'm like with Bill Wilson. I was in it. I was lost. I wasn't blaming everybody for everything. Why don't you? You know what you should do? You should loosen up. You're too uptight. Why don't you relax? What's wrong with you? If you'd only, you never. Daddy, you. Me? I know. You blame everybody. I had excuses, and that's the world I lived in, and it was crazy, full of resentments and frustration, and I did not know how to do life. I kid you not. I'm irritable, restless, and discontent. It was the bleakest, darkest emotional period of my life, coming into 1968. And a friend of mine who I was getting stoned with died February 1968. And it shook me up. It shook me up. And my wife of 5 years at that time went to an Al-Anon meeting, and she met Lois. And Lois told her, do these four things when you get home, and when I see you next week, we'll talk. She went to an Al-Anon meeting on Friday. She came back. I said, where you been? She said, I went to a meeting. I said, you talking about me? She said, I got problems. Who's talking about you? And I thought, no, I'm the one with the problems. You know, no one else is supposed to have problems around here. You know, and I start yelling at her. 1968, March, the end of March, 1968. And she repeated these four things that Lois told her to do from Al-Anon. She walked over to me, looked me in the eye, and said, Dion, I love you. I'm not your enemy. I've been trying to help you. Number two, I found out that I'm powerless. I have no power to help you. Three, there is a place you can go to that knows what you're going through. They know the solution to your problem. They have the key. Excuse me, I have to get the orange juice. And she walked away. And I ran after her. And she repackaged the four things. She said, Dion, I'm not your enemy. I love you. I adore you. Number two, I thought I could say something to make you understand. I found out that I have no power at all. I'm powerless. I cannot help you with your problem. Three, thank God there's a fellowship that exists that has the key. You can open the door opens from the inside. They'll give you the key. Thank God for that. Excuse me, I got to get the eggs. And she walked away. And I ran after her again. And all week she repackaged the four things. She wouldn't argue with me. And that scared the hell out of me. She was like detached. So I went to a meeting. And I tell you, when I walked into the vestibule of City Hall, where the meeting was in North Miami at the time, I always say I came into AA through the door of beauty, because all these men were standing around, together. They had like a little group, Jewish guys, Asian guys, Italian guys, black guys. It was like the United Nations. And they're like telling jokes to each other and laughing. And one guy fell on his knees. He was laughing from his belly. And I hadn't laughed in like 14 years. I was like, I wasn't even connected. I was drinking and drugging from the age of 14 to 28. It got worse and worse. And there's like 3 stages of alcoholism. The first stage is fun. The second stage is fun and some problems. The third stage is nothing but problems. And that's where I was, nothing but problems. So I come in and I knew nothing about sponsorship, meetings, service, God, nothing about this stuff. All I knew is these guys were loose and they were communicating, and they were a beautiful bunch of, they were on a foundation that was solid, that was loving and kind and peaceful and forgiving and just free. They were free. And I didn't know what that was. I saw how loose. I knew the truth when I saw it, because I was so full of crap, but I was at the point where I ran out of excuses and there was nobody else to blame. And I was full of pain. I hit a bottom. So I walk in and I'm with these men and they're talking about their fears. And I'm from the Bronx, man. You don't talk about your fears. I mean, you're going to go to the grave holding on to this stuff. Nobody's going to see your weaknesses. And you don't surrender. Surrender's a dirty word in my neighborhood. You could bang my head on the cement. I'm not going to give up nothing. That's the way you're brought up in the Bronx, So I didn't understand that word surrender at all. My sponsor said, it's not running away from anything. It's running to someone who loves you and wants you to have a joyous life. I'm thinking, what are these people talking about, So my sponsor was a wordsmith. And I want to share with everybody some of the things, instead of going through a drunkalog, I thought, let me share some of the things I learned in AA because my life, the last 56 years, I've been clean and sober, and I've lived a life. I feel privileged. I feel chosen. And if you're chosen, you don't sit in your chosenness. It's to share it with others. It's to share it with the world. So I want to share some of the things I learned that I didn't know, because AA is just what a wonderful. It's a perfect program. Okay, there's no perfect people in it, but the program is perfect. I kid you not. It works perfectly if you just follow it. That's all you have to do. It's like I had a sponsee once. He said, Dion, he said, this is like homework. I said, so what? Just do it. Anyway, my sponsor early on defined love for me. He said, Dion, I want to take off some of this camera because some of it's like a little disturbing to me. So I'm going to try to take it off. Okay. So he said, Dion, he said, a guy ran up to him early on. This is like maybe the first month I was in the program. A young guy I was 28. A young guy ran up to him, maybe in his 30s. And with his wife in tow, and he ran up to my soon-to-be sponsor, Jack, and he said to him, Jack, I'm getting divorced. I don't love her anymore. And Jack said to him, well, then love her. And he said, no, Jack, you don't understand. I don't love her anymore. We're getting divorced. And Jack said, well, then love her. And I'm thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Doesn't he hear the guy? And that's exactly what the guy said. Are you deaf? He said, I don't love her anymore. We're getting divorced. And Jack said, listen, love is not a feeling. It's an act of your will. It's an action. You choose to love. It's an action. He said, and it feels great to love. You will feel good. He said, but it's not a feeling. And you get a lot of that in AA. Somebody go, oh, I'm in love. And then 4 weeks later, they're out of love. They're not getting what they want. Like me, I'm a very selfish, self-centered guy, when I came in. I had no idea about this stuff. But who defined love for me in the Bronx, on the streets of the Bronx growing up? Nobody. You ask 100 people what love is, and you'll get 100 different answers. And I thought it was a feeling. I really didn't. He said, do you know where feelings come from? I waved at the air. I didn't know where feelings came from. He said, they come from your thoughts. Whatever you're thinking, you will feel. He said, if you're walking down the street, Dion, and you're thinking, my car has a flat, I lost my job, my wife is not doing it, my dog is down, I got to take the thing in, and by the time you hit the corner, you're depressed. He said, you will feel whatever you're thinking. And that's why we need a spiritual awakening, needless to say. We need to get our minds like on a higher reality, be transcendent. You say, how you doing? Well, I'm fine under the circumstances. You go, why are you under the circumstances? AA transcends the circumstances. So at that time, I thought freedom was doing anything I wanted, especially if I didn't get caught. That's my definition of freedom was leave me alone. Don't tell me what to do. I'm an American, or not even that. I'm from the Bronx. I'm going to do what I want. Nobody's going to, I didn't have any respect for hierarchy at all. Anybody with wisdom, nothing. I yelled at everybody. I was so smart, I knew everything. So he told me, he said, freedom is the ability to do God's best. And to be honest with you, my friends here, I was never free to do good. I was always in bondage to some kind of addiction. And he used to say, Dion, when you don't have God in your life, you're going to try to fill your life up, which the 12 and 12 tells us, with wealth, pleasure, power, and honor. The four great substitutes, the typical temptations: wealth, money, pleasure, power, and honor. You know, the sex, drugs, rock and roll. Power, you want position. And honor, you got to be right. You got to win. You got to be better. Just watch the Jersey Housewives. You get it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I never lie. You know what's wrong with you? You know, and everybody's jockeying to be better and win and be right and all this kind of stuff. Honor. And that's where I was. That's where I lived. And those things aren't bad. We're not Puritans in AA. But once you have a spiritual awakening, God shapes your desire for those things. And that was a game changer for me. In fact, that was my definition of freedom. That if I let God shape my desires, it's possible to achieve freedom and virtue. And then it becomes effortless. And that's where AA has lifted me. You know, it's my sponsor he was brilliant. I mean, he'd get me at every turn. He'd say, Dion, if you're here to be successful, if you're in AA to be successful, you're in the wrong place. If you're here to be fulfilled, you're in the right place. So, you know, he got me straight right away. I want to look up, I'm trying to find my phone where I put time. So anyway, I wanted to tell you another thing that's very, very important. Again, my sponsor was brilliant, and he said to me, Dion, don't ever confuse love with approval. I want you to get this because this is the way I brought up my daughters, and it works. He said, don't ever confuse love with approval. If you confuse the two, you're going to be seeking approval all your life. It's not love. He says, you know, God loves you unconditionally. But there's some things that offend him. But he loves you. He was loving you the same as right now when you were heavy into your addiction. He loved you with all, you know, God is love. God doesn't punish you. God is love. You get punished by acting out on your defects of character, by your shortcomings, by your sins. You get punished by them, not for them. He's the one that's saving us. That's why George Carlin used to talk. He used to have this joke about, but he never thought deep enough to really understand who God was. You know, he just kind of made up this. He was like an inch deep and a mile wide. You know what I mean? So, you know, my sponsor again. He told me, you know, when I was going through the steps, he said, Dion, you know, there's some things that might have happened to you, because I was talking to him after my fourth step. I said, you know, my father never had a real job. And my parents were always arguing. They were like emotional teenagers. They were like emotional 12-year-olds. They grew old, but they never grew up. Emotionally, they never really grew up. So they just argued 24 hours a day, you know, 7/24, you know. So he said, listen, he said, you know, you better distance yourself from your family for a little while, especially your mom. She's hiding a lot of deep psychological weaknesses, man. She criticizes everybody. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about at the time, but he explained it to me. He said, you know, and when I got away from them a little while and I started working the steps, I started seeing where a lot of my fears came from. Because when I was a kid sitting around the table with all my uncles who were engineers and foremen and electricians and police officers and firefighters and just great guys, 6'2", 6'4". They were just wonderful guys, and I loved my uncles, you know. But we would sit around a table, and they would put my father down because he never really worked. But in a way, I idolized my father. He had great qualities, but I mean, we'd go to Orchard Beach, and he'd swim from miles. He'd go out and swim from section 17 to 1 and back again, dive off the City Island Bridge. Then we come back into the neighborhood with all the tenement buildings, and he'd go up to the rooftop and he'd entertain the neighborhood. He'd walk on the edge of one of the tenement buildings on his hands. I mean, he was like Tarzan, but he didn't work. And when my uncles would put him down, I think when I was 7 years old, sitting there, they couldn't be too bright doing that around a 7-year-old, but I think it went deep down into me, and I think I vowed an oath to heaven. I swore an oath to heaven. Nobody's going to ever treat me like a joke. I'll punch their face in. I'm not like in the UFC. I'm not a rough guy. I'd rather consider myself a poet rather than a fighter. I mean, that's not my deal, you know what I mean? But he was trying to tell me, and he showed me in the book, he said, you know, a lot of the things that are driving us lie below the level of consciousness. And he showed me in the book where Bill Wilson says that. So I was telling him this. He says, you know, you got like a 7-year-old inside you, like running your life. And he said, knowing about it's not going to help you. So let's get on our knees. We were at his house, got on his knees near the sofa, and we prayed. And I reversed the decision. I said, God, I made a decision when I was 7 years old, because my sponsor said, he's not going to barge in on you and change it. You're going to have to ask him, because you swore this oath. You vowed an oath to heaven when you were 7 years old. So I got on my knees and I said, God, I want to reverse this decision. I said this when I was 7. I was wrong. You know, like if the first commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, my first commandment was don't say anything bad about me. I'll punch you right in your face. Is that a way to live? No, I don't think so. So these steps, you know, when you start taking inventory and start getting down in there, you start revisiting some of these areas in your life. For instance, you know, when I came in, all these guys were Christian. They go to church. They go to, you know, scripture didn't bother them. They didn't run away from it if you quoted a scripture. I mean, the early AA was, before they had the big book, that's the way they ran it. And they said, be quick to see where religious people are right and make good use of what they have to offer. Not where they're wrong, where they're right. So, because there's plenty of the other stuff going on too. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't have a fear of this thing, because the first book I bought was AA Come of Age. And it talked about the history of AA and ego reduction at depth. And they said the ego has remarkable recuperative powers. That's why we need a spiritual awakening. We need to stay small and have respect for hierarchy and those who know more than us. Recovery is a very humbling thing. You got to listen to others and actually do the stuff they tell you to do. Your sponsor tells you, you know. And that's how I got well, you know. I would never do that. I thought I knew everything, you know. Well, you know, the 12 steps are they were gleaned, when you read the history of AA, they were gleaned from the disciplines of St. Ignatius of Loyola, who was a warrior. He got He got injured, read the Bible, had a spiritual awakening, started the Jesuits. I just spoke at Fordham College. They asked me to speak at Fordham College at the lecture hall for 400 students. Would you believe it? They asked me. I didn't graduate high school, and I grew up 2 blocks away from Fordham College. So I told my wife, I said, why are they asking me? She said, you have life experience, you know. So, and I take no credit for this. This is all AA meetings, my sponsor, no credit at all. I'm just passing it on. What I learned the last 56 years, you know, I've been living it. I've been living it. And, you know, like I told you, I have 3 daughters, and I told them, my daughters who love me, who love being around me, they don't feel judged. I enjoy my daughters. I don't judge them. So they feel they could let their hair down around me. And I tell them, you're not obligated to me in no way. You don't have to live up to my expectations at all. All I want for you, I told them this a long time ago, when you have to make a decision, consult your mind, your heart, your God, your consciousness, and make the best decision possible. And I could go with that. I hope I wasn't, I had the microphone covered up here on my computer. I hope you heard me. I don't know, doing the best I could here. This is a beautiful program. It's 12 steps, and man, the 12 steps are designed to lead you into union with God. God created us in such a way only to work well when you're in union with him. And it says right in the book, the most courageous thing a man can do is open his heart to his creator. And like when you're broken, when the car's broken, where do you go? You bring it to the manufacturer. When I'm broken, I go to the manufacturer. You know, there's this thing sometimes you hear, oh, you reinvented yourself. You recreated yourself. Nah, I didn't create myself in the first place. I'm not about to recreate myself. You know, I didn't make my eyes to see and my ears to hear and my mouth to talk and my nose to breathe, you know. So I'm not about to recreate anything. I'm just evolving and maturing, hopefully. And yeah, I was an acorn. Now I'm growing into an oak tree. You know what I'm saying? Same DNA. I got to tell you, these 12 steps are so beautiful. They're so perfect. I believe that if you take step one, you know, defines the problem. You know, we're powerless. And step 2 defines the solution. And then step 3 is a decision. And you know you made it if you're writing it down. And step 4, you look at your selfishness, your fears, your dishonesty, your inconsideration, and you admit it to God, yourself, and another human being. And 5, you admit to God for forgiveness, to yourself for understanding, and another human being for humility. And then 6 helps you grow up. Man, you're getting ready to have all these defects of character removed. And then in 7, which is my favorite step, it says we asked him to remove our shortcomings. So right away, I knew right there, it wasn't a therapist. This is for me. I'm not putting down anybody's journey here because you could get help anywhere. But for me, it wasn't a therapist. It wasn't the group. I couldn't ask the group to remove my shortcomings. I couldn't even ask myself to remove my shortcomings. That's what got me to AA. But I got on my knees and I humbly asked him to remove my shortcomings. And there was, I knew right away it wasn't a new, you know, a new way, a new mechanism I had to find to, you know, or a new ability to like a self-help group kind of thing, a way that I could get over on these things, a new teaching or a new mechanism or no. It was just humbly ask him. And right, this is great. You'll love this. I'm reading the 7 step in the 12 and 12, and it says, this is what it says right in the book. It jumped off the page to me like in neon lights. Humility is a healer of pain. I said, what the hell does that mean? I didn't even know what that meant. And I asked my sponsor, and we got into that. And he's talked about getting on your knees a lot. He said, it's nothing special about getting on your knees. It's just, it's a humble position. It just, it's like respecting hierarchy, and I asked him, because I remember at the very beginning, I said to him, Jack, who's God? What are you talking about, God? Where's God? Where do what does he eat? Who's he married to? What are you talking about? Where do you find them? He said, Dion. He gave me a deep, rich, intellectual understanding of who God is. He really did. He sat me down, and I talked to him a few times about this. He said, Dion, you're not going to find God within the universe. He's not a supreme being hopping around the universe. You're going to go up in a capsule, and look, you go, there he is. No, you're not going to do a scraping and bring it back and put it under a petri dish and say, yeah, we found them. No. And I've always read the 24-hour book, which they gave me when I first come into AA, April 1st, 1968. And on page, I don't know what page it is, but it's May 1st. It says that God is outside of space and time. He created space and time. He's not subject to space and time. To God, it's not Wednesday. It's not 12:30 or whatever time it is right now. He's outside of space and time. He's not contingent on anything. He's the sheer act of being itself. Like when Moses said, who are you? He said, I am who I am. He's not there because Harriet and Jack got together one night and there he is, and no. He said all things are possible with God. He created space and time, and he created it all. And all things are possible with God. And that very night I went home and I started asking. And I got answers. I said one night I was going through the steps, and I remember praying, and when I got off my knees, I was changed. Something happened to me. I just had new glasses. I saw it differently. And I was in AA for about 11 years, and sponsoring guys, believing in God. I was a believer, and until one guy after 11 years, some young guy said to me, could you define God for me? So I went through this thing. He said, yeah, but what does he think about this? What does he think about, and I didn't know what to tell this guy. He was a pastor in a church. He was kind of confronting me, and it made me a little uncomfortable because I had this, who's God? I used to wave at the sky, say, he's up there. All I know is he took away my desire to drink and drug. He removed the obsession from me. I've been clean and sober 11 years. That's what God did for me. I know he exists. But he was asking me to define him. And I couldn't do it. I had no idea what he was, it was vague to me. He was asking me some questions and I didn't know what he was saying. But at the time I was about 38 years old, and I was jogging, and I used to do this 6-mile loop or 4-mile loop back then. And one day I went out jogging, and I was a little frustrated, And I said, God, it would be nice to be closer to you. And the sky opened up, and Christ appeared to me on the street, this beautiful, ethereal vision. I don't even know how to explain it. It was so powerful and brilliant and sudden. Uh, and I said, God, it would be nice to be closer to you. And I heard something drop behind me, like it sounded like an oak tree fell. And I looked back to see what it was. There was nothing there. And I ran straight into his body, and everything changed. It was like everything became Technicolor all of a sudden. Not that it wasn't Technicolor a minute ago, but now the sky was blue, the grass was green, cars were red, they were yellow, everything was clean and clear. And I ran back to the house and burst through the door, and I said, Susan, Jesus is real. She thought I overran. I was overheated or something. She's looking at me. She's like, "Oh, here he is. Okay, who doesn't know that?" I'm like, "Jesus is alive." She says, "Who doesn't know that?" I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" She says, "Yeah, like you're going to believe me." So everybody has to find out for themselves. These things. They have to ask. I got a feeling someday everybody's going to be standing in front of God. They're going to go, "How come this and how come that?" He's going to say, "Why didn't you ask?" Asking is a prayer, by the way. My sponsor told me whenever you see ask in the book, it's a prayer. So I learned, I don't know what time it is, but I'll close with this. Maybe we could, I just wanted to say that, I learned real early on is to say how to be honest, open, and willing. And honesty is really important, especially honesty with yourself, and openness. To be open, it's such a profound word, to be open. I think having a spiritual awakening made me totally open-minded. I am not closed-minded anymore. I'm the least judgmental person on the face of the planet. I make judgments. If I have a bad plumber who's overcharging me, I get another plumber. But I'm not judgmental. I don't judge anybody's heart or their soul, that kind of thing. So, you know, it, this program is so beautiful. I lost my thought. I was going somewhere, but I never thought I would have the life I have today. I'm 85 years old, and I love my family, and we're close, and I love my friends, the friendships I've made in AA, and most of my friendships are in AA. And I tell you, a guy like me, I never thought that I'd love going to church, but the stained glass windows look totally different from inside than from the outside. Yeah, I was outside kicking and screaming and kicking and yelling and I remember telling my sponsor when he mentioned anything religious, I said, "Oh no, I don't believe in that." I went off on a whole thing about why, I don't go there. I think this and this. And he leaned forward and he looked he said, "Dion," he said, "did you make these evaluations? Did you make these these opinions you have? Did you put this in place while you were drinking?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, let's revisit them, and maybe you want to revise some of these theories because they're wrong." And I went there with him, and he was right. So I revised some of these theories I had. It's a funny thing what alcoholics hear. When I talk to my aunts and uncles about church or anything like that, they all go, "Yeah, God is love. God is forgiving. He wants the best for you. He wants you to be fully alive, Dion. How come I heard He was a big guy in the sky with a baseball bat. How do you hear these things? Going to the same church, the same time? How do you hear different things like that? So, that's the way I decide. I come to the conclusion that alcoholics don't hear properly. They don't hear accurately. They got these things going on in their head and they hear what they want to hear. If they hear one thing wrong, they'll walk out of the room. I'm talking about me. Oh, God. So I'll just say that early on, when I was going to this club room, it wasn't an AA, don't have club rooms, but I was going to this club room where they had AA meetings. But behind the desk, when the speakers spoke, there were like 3 signs. It said, trust God, clean house, help others. And I got to say that is the most profound path you can choose. It's so simple. And those 3 things I didn't have when I came into AA. I didn't trust God. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know God from a hole in the wall. Clean house. I didn't know they were talking about it's better to be clean than to be clever, like your soul. I didn't know that. And help others? Who was into helping others? I was out for myself any way I could get it. It was a waste of time thinking of other people. That's how sick I was. So I think that trust God, clean house, help others is like a pathway to heaven. It's the pathway of the saints. Not that we're saints are going to become, but that's the pathway. It's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. I'm still working and trying to grow and still trying to learn, still stay close to the program and the people in it. And I love AA, and I still learn. I still ask. I'm still open, and I don't want to become a know-it-all because it's not a good place to be. It becomes a boring place to be. I love you guys, and Glenn, thank you for asking me to speak here, and thank you for listening. And I don't know what time it is, but thanks for listening, guys, and God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dion.